He who is not the king is not a fan of the king. Monocracy, Imperialism and Polyocracy. The relationship between the individual and the collective, Part 6. Vigilantes. Massa Resurgence 2581. Rebirth. The 20th of April 2023. In this part, we are set to examine whether there is a scientific explanation for why we need to respect each other and unite, and for avoiding bloodsheds. In the previous parts, it was mentioned that each one of us is a complete world, and a bigger world arises from us being together. According to Gestalt theory, the whole is qualitatively and quantitatively something greater than the sum of the parts. That is, when our worlds are placed next to each other, the power and greatness of the world that arises is greater than the sum of the powers of our individual worlds. Therefore, it is not a simple summation, but a more complex phenomenon occurs. The geometric and spatial structure or the three-dimensional shape of our juxtaposition is also involved in the emergence of the characteristics of the larger world that results. In order to be able to examine this together, we need to define the following concepts. Reality. For this topic, our default assumption is that there is one single reality. Truth. For this topic, our default assumption is that each of us has our own truth in our world, which is different from the truths of other worlds. Needs. Beings at birth inherently have a series of needs. From the need for food to the need to be hugged and so on. Perhaps, Maslow's hierarchy of needs provides an interesting classification of our needs for this topic. Intelligence. For this topic, we define intelligence as an ability that a person is born with, that helps him to meet his needs. Intelligence can be considered as an innate ability that exists in animals and other creatures as well. From this point of view, it can be said that it has mathematical and scientific basis. In the future parts, we will discuss that individual intelligence, that is, the intelligence that exists in each of our worlds, and each animal or any being, which is in synchronicity with the collective intelligence. Maybe that's why there is harmony in nature. Experience. When a person uses his intelligence to meet his needs, he acquires experience. For example, the baby is hungry, he cries, his mother gets angry. Consciousness. The set of acquired experiences makes a person create a series of cause and effect structures in his mind, which can be called consciousness. Considering that this consciousness is the result of defining cause and effects based on our experiences, it is necessary to be understandable and repeatable by others. This reproducibility is a feature that scientific research should have. Wisdom. Wisdom can be considered as a kind of consciousness that arises not as a result of experience and practical experiments, but in the mind and as a result of thinking, reasoning and rationalizing. It has been observed that the mind continues its thought process even when the person is asleep, and when the person wakes up, he realizes that he has reached a solution to a problem. From this point of view, it can be considered a so-called spiritual phenomenon. Perhaps the same thing as revelations or epiphanies. In any case, it is a phenomenon that is apparently only for humans. Of course, here maybe it was necessary to define the mind and thinking, and maybe a reference to Descartes' ideas and his famous quote that, "I think, therefore I am," had to made. Knowledge. Perhaps when a person can come to realize and understand some aspects of the relationship between his inner truth, and that single external reality that ultimately is in harmony with his potential plus actualized consciousness and wisdom, knowledge is developed. Our understanding of all these concepts are relative, and we can study each concept from either an individualistic perspective or a collective perspective for the main purpose of this discussion. For example, individual wisdom is some mental and spiritual consciousness that a person reaches in solitude. Collective wisdom is the mental or spiritual consciousness that a person attains alongside other people. Perhaps, the experience of this collective wisdom by each person may have a different form, but the achievement of collective wisdom makes communication between people easier, making it easier to reach a mutual understanding. What is the purpose of this philosophizing? Everything that is discussed here is one way or another related to Iran and the problems of the Middle East. The conclusion we can reach from the studying of human needs, intelligence, consciousness, wisdom, and knowledge as follows: simplifying life and getting more pleasure for yourself and others. Naturally, religious fanatics are against this conclusion. According to religious fanatics, everything that people do in this world is to help them get to heaven after death. This is despite the fact that these people who so adamantly claim to know about life after death or the other world, are most likely less intelligent than a donkey and their productivity for the society is less than a cow. To find proof for this claim of ours, we can look at the so-called leadership in Iran over the past 44 years. From Mr. Khamenei, the narcissistic donkey of the neighborhood, to Alam el-Hada, the male donkey, Khatami, the sly fox, and Rouhani, the keymaker of the neighborhood, who himself pulled the chair from under his son's feet and hanged him, a behavior that is unlikely to be seen among animals. For example, even a domestic chicken defends its chicks with all its might against any predator. In this 44-year-old comedy tragedy play, all these main actors, along with the audience, have equal importance and equal responsibility. As explained in the first and second part of these series, no one is more or less important than anyone else. The sad drama that we have seen and experienced in the past 44 years is the result of both the individualistic and collective needs, intelligence, experiences, consciousness, wisdom and knowledge of us Iranians, and perhaps the whole world. Therefore, each one of us is responsible for the disaster that happened in 1979. In the coming years, psychologists and sociologists will study this phenomenon more deeply, with the help of the main players involved. Because it must be clarified how Mr. Khamenei became the narcissistic donkey of the neighborhood, the one who himself admitted initially and upon becoming the leader that one should cry blood for the nation that he is the leader of. Then how did he become so self-righteous and grandiose delusional? And how did the people, or let's say the audience to this comedy tragedy, who heard Mr. Rafsanjani, the castrated dog of the neighborhood, loud and clear, when he emphasized that the leadership of this narcissistic donkey is temporary and valid only until the referendum, did not follow up on this matter, and Khamenei metamorphosed into the creature he has become today. Here we need to explain an important phenomenon. In the Eastern world, societies are governed based on individual wisdom and collective wisdom and the knowledge derived from these two, while in the Western societies, the administrative system is planned based on intelligence, experience and individual and collective consciousness and the knowledge that results from these four. Although individual and collective wisdom is also utilized in Western societies, they are not included in the formulas and equations that are used in the administration for decision-making and planning. This difference is probably rooted in the agricultural nature of the East and the industrial nature of the West. Industry and trade are based on science, mathematics, and complex logic. As a result of the acquisition of these sciences and the practical use of these sciences, people in the Western society gain self-confidence. In the agricultural society, however, environmental factors such as water, heat and soil play an important role. If it doesn't rain one year, or rains too much, the only thing a farmer can do is pray. In this way, in the Eastern societies, instead of self-belief, a person relies on unseen forces and relies on a higher power external to him. The prevailing culture in civilized and industrialized societies has caused the emergence of pragmatic philosophies, while in the East, philosophies are mostly spiritual or metaphysical, which leads to the spread of superstitions in the society. In the East, it doesn't matter what a person thinks or how hard he works on the farm, if it rains, his life will be good, if it doesn't rain, or if it rains too much, he will be miserable. Maybe this is where the conspiracy theories and the fact that they generally think that everything that happens in their lives is done by an external force, comes from. As a result, in the West, and with the use of industry and technology, the basic needs of humans have been met, but in the East, people are still worried about meeting their basic needs. From the point of view of psychology, and according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, these days we see that Western philosophy is based on higher needs, such as knowing, beauty, and self-actualization, and it pays attention to the outside world, the environment, and the universe. As a result, the society is structured better and is relatively kinder. But in the Eastern societies, philosophy is based on scarcity needs, such as the need to provide food, create basic sense of safety, and getting noticed, which is causing the society to be introverted, individualistic, self-centered, and selfish, like a deprived baby, cut off from the outside world. If we want to offer a formula, in the West, intelligence plus experience plus consciousness plus knowledge plus internal locus of control, equals meeting both basic and higher needs plus simplifying life plus human rights plus enjoyment plus spiritual growth, self-actualization. In the East, wisdom plus knowledge plus external locus of control equals getting stuck in basic needs plus making life harder plus brutality in human behaviors. Let's return to the case of Iran and the problems of the Middle East. Considering that wisdom takes a spiritual or metaphysical form, and as far as we know, human beings have not been able to formulate it, therefore, during the last 44 years, Iran has been run based on a baseless system of thought, which has resulted in superficiality, indifference, and confusion among people. Considering that the person is drowned in his inner reality, selfishness and primitive fears and is not able to compare himself logically and scientifically with others, or maybe is even terrified to look outside from his inner world. On one hand we witness extreme narcissism, omnipotence, and on the other hand we witness extreme self-deprecation. The result is the catastrophic occurrence of extreme individualism or monocracy in these societies. Finally, we are witnessing that people either want to play the role of a slave or the role of a master, a struggle that finally leads them to placing one person in the position of power, who then controls the whole country based on his own personal wisdom and inner truth, which usually has nothing to do with the different truths in the society, or the collective truth, or the reality. In such a society, if a king like Mohammad Reza Shah comes to power, who wants to encourage everyone to accept responsibility, and introduces everyone as the heir to the throne, and creates the famous White Revolution, in the hope of some fundamental reforms in the society, it results in the bloody disaster of 1979. The society expels Mohammad Reza Shah, and in his place puts a leader like the illiterate female gorilla of our story, or the female narcissistic donkey of the neighborhood, who becomes the absolute ruler. Thus ignorance, darkness, and misery cast a shadow over that country. What seems to be the solution for such societies is the constitutional parliamentary system of government, with an inherently designed polyocracy, which is placed alongside the society. In this way, neither the people turn into the slave to the government, nor the government turns into the master to the people. Rather, the administration of the society is done through complex two-way formulas, and the existing pyramidal structure does not shock the society, which is used to having a master over itself. The society that is used to slavery and the resulting Lumpen proletariat will show a lot of resistance against this structural shift. However, in Iran, by the hands and the minds of brave and elite youth, the traditional baseless structure was challenged so strongly and forcefully, that the wisdom of the illiterate donkeys who have dominated everything for 44 years surrendered and fell apart. In such a situation, on the one hand, we have the youth with their scientific and logical demands that the already fallen ruling system can only respond to with torture, widespread killings and even genocide, and on the other hand, we have an illiterate and dishonorable population that, if this structural shift is completed, they become unemployed and useless. In some other parts outside of this collection of, "He who is not the king is not a fan of the king," we will explain more on the structure of this illiterate and dishonorable population, which includes fanatic religious people, Pahlavi Alahis, and Mujahideen. The solution of building the independent city-state of Pavok, and the settlement of the elders of the fanatic religious groups in this city, is one of the dozens of solutions that were presented to help accelerate this structural shift. Therefore, on the one hand, based on the acceptance of the commitment regarding the acceptance of refugees in the future of Iran, and on the other hand, with the aim of studying this religious population closely, the construction of Pajvak city was put on the agenda. In addition, if these elders really believe that they know something that others do not know, they will be given the opportunity to weave philosophical ramblings in this city of Pajvak forever and leave the people of Iran alone. It is obvious that if they can produce anything of worthy of attention, the Iranian society will surely benefit from it. Vigilantes. Massa Resurgence 2581. Rebirth. The 20th of April 2023.